Seth's already hacked the mic, so I think we'll let him talk.
Is it okay to interrupt with
Go right
questions?
ahead, yeah.
'Cause, so I've got a comment that will probably turn into a question or two, and it has to do with supply chain, which is sort of close to my heart, especially in the application development space. I think the comment first, and then maybe a question. There may be a disconnect here with respect to application development. And I say that having come from a fairly large utility recently, where most of the application development was on the business or IT side and done by employees. So you mentioned 200 plus developers. Yeah, that's about right. They're all vetted members of the organization, their background checks, the whole, employment process.
Unless they're not.
Unless they're not, but they are. My concern would be, and I guess this is going to be a multi-part question. The first part is, do you agree? My concern would be that where the application development is done for the operational systems is generally outside of the organization. The utilities are at the mercy, to a certain extent, of the vendors, whether it's the integrators or the manufacturers of the control system software, or name it. If we're talking smart grid, you go all the way down to the firmware in the meters. And so from my limited perspective, the concern that I have is around the supply chain of things like cryptographic key material and source code that is deployed on these very massively distributed systems. And so, do you share that concern?
Hey, Seth?
Yeah.
Can I ask you to sit down for about 3 minutes? Because I've got a line of questioning that's going to lead right into that question, and I'd rather...
See ya.
I'd like to... No,
Yeah.
Hold on just a minute.
You got it.
Because I want to make sure that I get Andy here.
But we're ready, though. We're ready.
Yeah, well, I want to ask you, because you opened the door on a question of what vulnerabilities are acceptable.
Wow. Seth, I swear, we're not going to leave you. You put a lot of effort into the question. You deserve a prompt and full answer. What vulnerabilities are acceptable are vulnerabilities that the organization has, and let's say there's 100 candidate vulnerability types floating around, just so we can have a round number to work with. The organization has considered all of them, has taken input from the boutique firms and the large organizations, MITRE, SANS, et cetera, the Open for Web Apps, the OWASP group, and has decided for themselves that the easiest to find, easiest to hack, hardest to protect against vulnerabilities are the ones that they want to make sure that they eradicate, and that other ones that are buried so deep down, that are really either hard to find or very hard to exploit, that they're going to save those for another day. They want to be aware that they have them, perhaps, but it's all a question of prioritization. And we do not. I've been tempted to help write the policy before about this is what's okay and this is what's not okay, but never do it. It's got to be something that comes from inside.
So
and
clarify
you
who
can
makes
counsel
those
on.
decisions.
It's got to be inside. It's got to be a utility's internal
client, the
decision
customers.
based completely on risk.
That scares me to death.
Risk management.
Like buffer overflows and race conditions.
They still have to have. It still has to come from them, and that means it may not come real fast from the way a security person would prefer, but through education and illustrations of what happens in other sectors and what happens in some places in this sector. It has to be something that is owned by the utility.
Thank you for being so honest. That's a scary answer, actually, but very real. And that's where we're at, right? The customers have the power, so we got to educate the customers, right? That's why we're here. Let's see. I will skip a question and probably come back to it, and we'll go straight into the simple
I'm sorry, just one more point on that is, fundamentally, it's down to what asset are you protecting and what is the risk? That was the last statement that you made.
Yeah.
And the reality is, if you care about true security and you're protecting a critical asset, then there should be zero vulnerabilities, right? And your systems also need a mechanism of protecting against zero-day intrusions, right? And what happens when something goes wrong? How is your system going to respond? What technology is in place to be able to respond to those types of failures? So.
Can I take Jim's comment on 0 days and
Go.
pursue Seth?
Where is
And say, that, you know, it would be impossible to have a conference called the Smart Grid Security Conference, east, west, north, or south, and not to say that there's this thing called Stuxnet out there. And
What's that?
Stuxnet is full of, oh, it's scary that you say that. Stuxnet is this thing that, among many other weaknesses, took advantage of for 0 days, right? So, and to the supply chain issue, it is, first of all, thank goodness, we can all say, thank goodness, it wasn't targeted at our community. Because if it was, it could have done very many bad things. But anyway, so it was a wake-up call, and depends on how effective a wake-up call it was. But the utilities, had it been targeting its utilities, it would be really difficult to say that it was utilities' fault for getting hit by Stuxnet, because the systems that it took advantage of, whether they're the IT side, the California company, or whether they're on the OT side, the German company, that's what they have to choose from. They don't have other devices that are more secure, or other systems that are
That's
more
right.
secure to choose from.
That's right.
They're totally screwed in that sense. And I think we heard it in an earlier panel, from the meter makers, if they know enough to start asking for it, and then start demanding it, then they might get it. We might all get it, which we sorely need. But that's where we are today in the supply chain. Sounds like the meter vendors, from Robert Former, who said it at the precursor event to this in San Jose, said, when somebody asked him a similar question, this isn't a year ago, I think it's 9 months ago, he said, we've been doing source code reviews of most of our software, most of our embedded firmware stuff now. He said, we didn't used to do that. And he said they echoed something, he and Ito echoed something like that today. And so it's 9 months later, now they're getting even more intense on it. So some places are embedded?
I can't say that they're doing it widely, though. A lot of these people.
Embedded by, I meant SCADA, ICS type
Yeah,
stuff.
exactly. Even in those systems, a lot of them are relying on homegrown technology to protect their systems from an operating system perspective.
Yeah, they
Not
don't get
certified.
it yet.
They're not there
working on
yet.
it.
They're not
Yeah,
there.
I'm sorry, let me qualify that statement. We don't have a significant enough proliferation of get it in that field to actually be effective, because the
Right.
people who get it don't have the power, and the people who have the power don't get it.
Well, it's scary enough that security is still relatively new in this marketplace.
We keep pushing there. So, supply chain, within the development of your products and guidance that you can provide, and anything else that I missed, Seth? I meant actually like sit down in the chair. I didn't mean like don't just shut up. I just
Let's hear the answer, and I might have a follow-up.
shoot, guys. We'll go with you, Jim. What are your thoughts on supply chain security management when your customers come to you
Right.
and say, this is really important, I got to make sure that the microchips don't come from the Chinese or the Russians, or, well, insert scary miniature group or nation state here.
Yeah, well, it's a major issue, clearly, right? The question is, from our customer's perspective, they're fighting, if you will, authentication from a number of avenues. It's authentication of the device, the information, and the people who are transmitting that information to and back from each other. Right, so our customers are coming to us and saying, how can you help in that area? Well, Green Hills has the underlying core technology to run applications which are safe and secure. But more importantly, from the resiliency of the grid perspective, we have technology that will enable them to protect their systems should something intrude in their system. So we have technology that will, if you will, encapsulate those applications and don't allow them to bring down other components in the system along the line. I know that doesn't directly address everything in terms of supply
So
chain.
let me stick it more directly at you.
Go ahead.
Do you use third-party libraries?
No.
You
No,
write
the
all
device
of your
driver-
own core, everything
Yeah.
up?
Again, we have different versions of our technology. Some of them are absolutely secure, like I described previously. We have other operating system technology where it's not completely secure, maybe on the small kernel side for different types of applications. So from the absolutely secure operating system technology with integrity, we provide all of our own board support packages, secure device drivers, everything's done internally.
Okay. And how do you prove that it's absolutely secure?
Again, we go through an extensive evaluation process. What we do is we submit our technology through the NSA, and that's how it's evaluated. With rigorous line-by-line code testing, documentation on every line of code. I can go through the whole cycle here, but we don't have enough time.
That's some pretty impressive words to use.
It's also a very expensive process.
I'm sure it is, and depending on who in the NSA looked at it, I might have more or less respect for it.
Just a question for clarity, Daniel here from GE. So are you stating that just, all this review process you're talking about is great, and I understand where you're coming from, but you're saying if something goes through that review process, you're saying that there's a guarantee there'll never be any vulnerabilities in software, which is inherently made by
I'm not.
error-prone humans?
From a legal standpoint?
No, I don't, I'm not a lawyer.
Well, ultimately, that's frankly.
I'm just saying from a technical standpoint, in the security community,
Yep.
no one will use the words like absolute. Software is a very complex thing. It's built by humans. It has thousands of
Right.
lines of codes.
Right.
It has inherent state complexity. There's going to always be that magic piece of input that's going to make that software behave in an unanticipated way.
Right.
I don't think there's any certification out there that gives you the guarantee that that's not going to happen.
Right. Yeah, let me, how do I describe it very succinctly? I think that we use the term absolutely secure because the Joint Strike Fighter trusts the operating system. We use absolutely secure because we have secure radios that are used in transmission, certified by the NSA. So is there a guarantee? No. There is no disclaimer that's anywhere in our documentation that I'm aware of. But we use the term absolutely secure, and it's been around for years and years and years and proven. What's interesting is that it's new to this market, all right? But it's been proven in other markets.
So how big is that code base? Do you have a guess? Because what I found is that
Yeah.
with each new line of code
Yeah.
comes that much less security. So, I mean, some
Yeah.
small code bases,
Yeah.
I can actually get behind a relatively absolute
Right.
security level.
Okay, I'll give it back to Andy here in a minute, because I've been kind of usurping the time,
He's
but.
taking enough abuse from us.
Yeah, no, it's an important question because that code base, to answer your question, is we have a scalable operating system technology, and it's not just about one operating system, it's the company's pedigree in developing different variants of that operating system for specific markets with specific secure device drivers. So it's not about one specific solution.
Okay.
It's about the ability to deliver those solutions to the market. So it's in the order of a few K on our low-end operating system technology to a few hundred K in terms of size. And again, for certification perspective, that doesn't change. That operating system stays stable.
Very interesting.
And Brian, please allow me to finish off, not like driving a stake through the heart of it, but to provide a complete and satisfying, hopefully, answer to the original Seth question, as interpreted by Matthew. So if you're being asked to speak like from our company's point of view, then I can construe 3 different ways that application security goodness gets into the community, into the utility installed base that apply here. One being from my part of it, from Rational and AppScan, the tools and the services and some of the consultative advice that we give on things like policy, to the development shops of utilities. And again, would we say 100, 200 if you're a big one? Some, very, very many are smaller than that or non-existent. All the way down to the example I keep hearing coming up of, there's a guy in North Dakota who's a kid who is responsible for 2 turbines, but his main job is to work a soda fountain in the drugstore. So he doesn't have a development shop. So that's the low end. But so bringing awareness and then capability to those folks, the internal development teams, who are both building their own assets that are getting deployed, also sometimes who are informing the specifications of an RFP in an outsourcing environment. There are places, including some very big utilities that I'm familiar with, that they could never beat down the wall. You know, for the people here who know application security, like from a business, its name tells you its problem. Applications are one group of people, and they've come from one planet, and they are incented and educated to do certain things. And security people are from an entirely different universe. And they often don't talk or communicate or collaborate particularly effectively in many organizations, okay, to include our community here. Outsourcing is an interesting way of circumventing those cultural stovepipes. If in an RFP you say, we will give you lots of money if you write applications and maintain applications for us securely, as we define securely, then you've beat it. It didn't matter that your own people couldn't ever come to work with each other on that issue. Now, and a third party is going to do it for you, and your own people's cultural enmities, whatever, won't figure in. So, application security services, policy, tools for utilities. Then there's application security goodness, meaning hopefully as many vulnerabilities are knocked out prior to IBM marketing a new version of its product, because it didn't always do this, I don't believe. I think it's like the rest of the world. The more customers started being aware of it, started asking for it, the tighter the security screws get turned on things that come out of software group from IBM. And today that's a work in progress, but it's getting better and better and better. And then the last part of the supply chain question, because that's part of it, is providing these capabilities and tools to the suppliers. So in our Stuxnet example, saying, hey, your products were at the heart of the, or at least were an important part of the Stuxnet attack vector. What are you doing today to make sure that the installed base is safer from an APT like that, again, son of Stuxnet, and see what the answer to that is, because maybe firms like ours could be of assistance. And secondly, for a future generation of products, SCADA systems, ICS systems that aren't out there yet, so we don't have the legacy burden. What have you learned from things like Stuxnet that are applying to the designs of those new systems? That you have carte blanche. Obviously, you'll have some interoperability and compatibility issues, but other than that, what are you putting into the new systems? And we would want to know both that the present is being taken care of as much as possible, and the future is leveraging that knowledge as much as possible, so next gen stuff is good.